Jesus Freak here. One of my interests has always been foreign languages. I was raised very close most of my life to the Canadian border and frequently had access to French language media, but I never really picked up French. Did take it in high school, and I can somewhat understand it. More if it's written. I took two other languages in high school, it's Spanish and Japanese. I kept my Japanese up more than my Spanish. So my Spanish did rot a little bit. But since I used Spanish a little more than French, it's not completely gone. I had trouble pronouncing Spanish because they don't really teach you very much about beyond the basics in school. And I didn't have access to a lot of Spanish language media. With Japanese, I was able to keep it up a bit better because soon after I graduated from high school, bilingual DVDs became a thing. And not long after that, it started to be easy to get media direct from Japan. Which allowed me to expose myself to Japanese media really easily. So, but as a result of this exposure, this immersion in Japanese, because it was mostly anime, the result is I sound like a cartoon when I'm speaking Japanese. Which I'm sure makes sense. If you were to learn English by watching Saturday morning cartoons, you'd sound like a cartoon character when speaking English. More recently, I've tried to apply some of my Japanese pronunciation to try to cover up for my disfluency in Spanish. It seems to have helped a little bit. See, the consonants in Japanese are the same as English, but the vowels are closer to Spanish. Now, I still have trouble with double R. I probably always have trouble with that. Now, on one hand, I consider myself monolingual because I'm only fluent in one language. If I had to, it could get around in Japan. It could get around somewhere that spoke Spanish to some degree. I'd be lucky if I could get a positive answer, though, if I said, lo siento, o no hablo bien en español. Whether it said hablar inglés, por favor, something like that. Just so that, in the worst case, I mean, I can generally understand if it's spoken slowly enough. But I might not be able to speak it, and I have to warn people in advance. I might have to resort to using English. There's been times where I've had conversations with people that were half in Spanish and half in English. I'd occasionally drop the hint that I understood just fine without needing the translator, without having to feed what they were saying into Google Translate. Because a lot of people, if they have to speak English, they use Google Translate. When I speak Spanish, that's my real Spanish. I'm not using a translator. So it might be broken, but it's not broken because of a stupid computer. I've had people suggest I should try doing my Sunday scripture readings in Spanish, which theoretically I could, but because of my disfluency, it would be a lot harder than it is recording them in English. I actually did a test video. I actually lacked the words to say our first reading or whatever is from whatever, and I tried to say that for the first reading and gave up because my Spanish was just that horrible. And I don't think there'd be any point even trying anything else, any other languages. Now, I could do a modern English version, but unless I use specific translations that I really don't want to use, I'd have to get permission to do that because of copyright. Could I get away with it? I could probably get away with it, but I don't like to take those chances. Because if some idiot called me out and reported me to the copyright holders, they could probably flag my video for infringing copyright, and then, I've infringed copyright 4 times in one video. So I'd rather make sure I have permission first. And for the translation that I'd use, the permission would have to come from HarperCollins. Because, non-KJV. Now, those short prayers, I think they're called collects. There's a short prayer that I recite before each reading. It comes from the Book of Common Prayer. The 1979 Episcopal edition that I use has both 1662 English and 1979 English options. Obviously, with the KJV readings, I use the 1662 options. If I'm reading for the New King James, I'm going to use the 79 option. And the Episcopal Church has graciously contributed the Book of Common Prayer that they use into the public domain. And if worse comes to worse, this actually includes the full translation of the Psalms. It's in the public domain in modern English. So that's an option too. But not one I really want to use, because it's a rather loose translation. Now, they only did the English version of the Book of Common Prayer in the public domain. So if I were going to try to do anything frequent with Spanish, I'm probably going to have to contact the Episcopal Church's copyright holding company to get permission to use the Spanish translation there too. Also, I don't currently have any good public domain Spanish translations of the Bible, so I'd be relying on the United Bible Societies for rights to use the Reina Valera 60, or alternatively, I'd have to contact Lockman, see if they'd let me use NBLA. Which I'd prefer the NBLA, because while the style is very close to the Reina Valera, as expected of a Spanish counterpart of the NASB, I don't like how the Reina Valera insists on translating the name the way they do. They use Jehová. And I don't like to say that any more than I like saying Jehovah. I'd rather avoid saying it. The less you use it, the less you can misuse it, is my rationale. I'm like, yeah, I understand, JHVH. But that's beyond the point. And considering that I'm already using an English translation that prefers to use Lord, I'd rather use a Spanish translation to use Señor. I like to keep some continuity between the English version and if I do a Spanish version, as well as between, say, some theoretical non-KJV version. Just some things I had in mind. Jesus freak out. And I should really do more of these videos on the phone instead of with my webcam, even if I'm putting the phone in the same place.